Alright guys, welcome back to Tryhard Tuesday. This is the place where I'm going to do my absolute best to play the best decks possible in Legacy and try my hardest to win. Today is going to be no short of that. I got sent this 75 by a cool dude over on my Metafy. For sure, I wanted to play this deck on the channel. Why not? Blue Black Tempo, the default. Let's call it Policeman deck of Legacy at the moment. You play the generic Disruption of Days, Forces, Wasteland, Thoughtseize, Efficient Removal in Fatal Push, Best Creatures in MTGO, Bowmasters, Murktide. You then use a little bit of trickery when it comes to Kaito. Sometimes it's a removal spell, sometimes it's a draw spell, sometimes it's a creature. You have some, again, kill everything, very universal answer card in Brazen Borrower. And you have your cantrips. Stable mana base with a couple of basics. And then we have a spicy one in the main deck here that the member insisted that I did not cut from the deck. Liliana of the Veil. So let's talk a little bit about why this card is not as good anymore, and why what kind of needs to be true in order for this card to shine in the matches we have coming up. So Liliana used to be the best Planeswalker in all of Magic. And mainly it saw play out of decks that was trying to do like a Pox game plan of reducing the resources in the game so that a Tarmogoyf was most likely to be the best card left standing. The card shined a lot when you have a little bit of graveyard synergy. I remember, ditching Lingering Souls to this card, punishing fire, stuff like that. Basically where you make the +1 asymmetrical. But that's not really the case for this deck. I don't think you should really count Nethergoyf, but I guess. So in this deck, we're hopefully trying to kill big creatures that are hard to kill with Fatal Push. We are trying to, let's say we play against a combo deck, we can discard some bad Fatal Pushes in game 1. And maybe we get to kill something like a Nadu without giving our opponent a bonus. But yeah, definitely a flexible card. In my personal opinion, 3 mana is too much to pay for a flexible card these days. I cut a Bowmasters in order to fit the Liliana, so obviously we have to justify that by itself, right? Other than that, super standard main deck. I love the baubles, by the way. This makes Nethergoyf into something better than a Curdape frequently. Sideboard, the member is focusing a lot on the graveyard here. No cages. I love Cage as a crossover card for handling Greens on Zenith mainly. Fluster, I think, is something that makes sense right now to counter stock up, show and tell, stuff like that. Hydros are better than ever, especially if people watched my video last week where I played the new Samurai Cutter. Can't remember the name. Something Cutter that makes monks. That makes Hydroblast even better. Good against Moon, Red Painter, Red Delva variants, Red Storm variants, etc. Negation against any combo deck. Harbinger against Saga and greedy mana bases. Baragorf to go a little bit bigger at post sideboard where cards like Days are not going to be the best. Go for the Throat as hard removal that notably does not target Painter, Dreadnought, and Saga tokens. And then some Null Rod in case Painter is up and about. And I guess it's going to be good against some random Storm decks, etc. So if I were to build this deck, I would not play the Liliana and I would not play the Null Rods. And I would change my Graveyard Hate, but that's, super minor. So let's see how it goes. I'm pretty excited for this one. All right, round 1, I'm playing Blue Black Tempo from a Metafy member featuring Liliana of the Veil. Yeah, this hand is awesome. And I guess I already regret not spending time changing the versions of these cards. I had to double check my hand for a minute here, but yeah, this hand is obviously great. I can go either turn 1 Thoughtseize or turn 1 Nethergoyf. I think because the Nethergoyf is going to be so small that I'm going to go turn 1 Thoughtseize. Then I get better information. Maybe I can catch them off guard with a Daze. Force a good play with Thoughtseize. So let's start with that. Ooh, we're going to be playing against the deck where Null Rod is going to be awesome. Gotta love that one. Worth noting is my opponent does not have Tron. My opponent can shut down Wasteland, which is annoying. So let's see. Is that how I play? Just take the Needle. Then my opponent plays Defense Grid. I Daze it. I Wasteland the Tomb. Sure. So obviously we will have to put on some pressure here. But I actually feel like Nethergoyf is going to do that, speaking of it being a Curd Ape. Here's Defense Grid. Getting dazed because it shuts down future Force of Will. I don't want that to happen. So let's see. Tomb. That one, that one. Opponent is left with those cards and one unknown. Sure. So now let's Wasteland that one. So the danger of Wastelanding this one is, so obviously it's great to shut down 2 mana from my opponent. The danger is the opponent completes Tron now. That one, sure. So now I think it's time for me to put a clock into play, and then next turn kind of start digging for stuff. Don't Tron me, bro. Don't Tron me, bro. The Nexus plus Ursa's Tower is brutal, especially because I had information about my opponent's hand. So all I could do was line up my disruption well. Hope for the best. Versus Workshop. Opponent's at 2 mana, stuck with a couple of Flesh Rakers, and then now we can kind of guess the opponent's hand. It's not Grim Monolith. It's not 1-drops. Could be a Petal, because you don't want to, you know, crack a Petal to play this card. But could also be big bad cards like One Ring. So now I have the choice between casting cantrips, looking for, I guess, Nethergoyf, Thoughtseize, Wasteland, or just simply play the Bowmaster. Feel like that list is too long. So let's cast Brainstorm. So at least one land is going to be bad here. Oh, is the Tamiyo good against that deck? I don't think Tamiyo is very good against that deck. So I Thoughtseize my opponent now, shuffling. And then next turn I have mana to ponder first. Fall back on Bowmasters if I don't hit anything exciting. Okay, so I think this is where I take the Mystic Forge. Is that true? That card is uncastable, but it makes lands good from the top of the opponent's deck. 7 mana is a bit down the road. I'm going to take the Mystic Forge here, and I will note that I have to finish things off here. Okay, perfect for me. That was like a brick for the opponent. So they're left with 3 uncastables. Brazen Borrowers, probably not that bad, but not that great either. Force of Will is amazing. So is Wasteland, but I think with the Force, this is going to be better. Because I can force the first thing, then Wasteland my opponent if they find a land. So I need to draw the Bauble here, which will then get into Force Will and my opponent's upkeep, and then I draw Wasteland for the next draw step. This way, I'm growing my Nethergoyf. My opponent's drawing another brick, so yeah, this game is probably over. Fun fact is now I love all of my top cards, so I'm not sure I should play out this Bowmaster, should I? Well, maybe I should, because then I'm forcing my opponent's next play. Okay, so I guess it didn't matter too much, but I just found what I needed off the Ponder. Draw a Daze. That's not going to do any difference. In case I needed to play the Brazen or Petty Theft, it would have been a nice force pitch. And now I'm hitting my opponent down to 4. And at this point, my opponent thinks they're alive to draw something like an Ancient Tomb and get super lucky with Ring, but they're not, and we're going to sideboarding. So pretty smooth sailing here based on generic disruption. Thoughtseize, Daze, Wasteland. What a nice first couple of turns. And then Nethergoyf doing its job here. A card that not everybody likes when playing Dimir colors. So love the Null Rods, love the Harbingers, love the Negation. We're worth noting is that the opponent has defense grids, so if that lands, we still have disruption from Null Rod and Thoughtseize. All right, so I'm going to get rid of the baubles here because I don't want any bad synergy with Null Rod. The pushes are not very good. I might need a couple. How do I feel about cutting 2? Probably fine. Then we have stuff like Liliana and Kaito. I feel like against a one-ring, what's the other card I'm thinking about now? Mystic Forge deck. Liliana is not gonna cut it. Don't have a problem. Maybe I should just get rid of Kaito altogether. I feel like even Timio is kind of a stretch when it comes to value. So that lets me play a third push. Push is really bad to draw 2 copies of, but I feel like the first copy is going to be frequently fine. 2 or 3. 2 or 3. Maybe this setup is just fine. I mean, what would I have instead? A Kaito because it pitches to force. Let's just quickly check our blue count. I would guess it's super healthy. 26, which is awesome. You can always use more, though. Okay, let's try with 3 pushes, and then I'll tell the deck that I don't want to see 2 copies, but the first one is fine. All right, we won game 1 against Mystic Forge by simply playing the disruption cards that are live against all combo decks. That's a big strength of playing, you know, Force, Thoughtseize, Wasteland. You don't really care if the opponent is playing, you know, Mystic Forge, Show and Tell, or whatever the case may be. As always, I'm super excited that you're joining me for these videos. I think they're awesome to make. I'm still learning, but let's be fair. I'll probably never learn to play as well on camera as I do off camera. But it's fun to try. Okay, so this is kind of funny. So in theory, my opponent could play a needle and name these deltas. So I should probably sack a delta here, despite getting Underground Sea, which is kind of funny. The Murktide was probably a good draw because it allows Daze to be a disruptive spell. Let's try and Thoughtseize. Defense Grid and Karn, and the opponent is straight into Tron here. Yeah, this is going to be very rough unless I find Harbinger. So, yes, taking Defense Grid. And then hoping my opponent plays into Daze. Do play into Daze, as they probably should. And now it's kind of up to me to find a wasteland for the Saga before dying to it. Let's see if that's possible. That is certainly a wasteland to not die to Urza Saga. So now I'll play Flooded Strand with the intention to get your city's sewers. If bad things happen, I force a will. If bad things don't happen, I like my spot a lot. Like bad things are happening. I'm gonna let Monolith resolve. Now my opponent basically has, okay, so let's see. Workshop. So my opponent has infinite mana, which is not the end of the world. Let me put it that way. Sometimes you get into situations like that, playing against, let's say, like Carpet of Flowers out of some decks, then it's like, oh, it's so scary they have a lot of mana, but if I can Pyroblast and Force of Will some spells, I'll probably be okay. Okay, I feel like this is a plan. Play Nethergoyf, kill Saga. If I draw another blue card, next turn play Merc. If I don't, play Bowmasters. It's very important to reduce your opponent's life total while making these, you know, Thoughtseize, Wasteland, Daze plays, because otherwise, you know, I'm just delaying the inevitable. So playing out a 3/4 here is respectable. There's a lot of spells in my opponent's deck I have to force. That is not one of them, which is amazing breathing room for me. Here's Harbinger even. Ooh. So what I could do is play Murktide, but I think that kind of diminishes the point. So maybe I go like this. Attack for 3, fetch Womp, and step the Bowmaster. And now I have a reasonable clock, and I'm shutting down my opponent's... I guess even shutting down the mana at this point is not that great. It could help against top-decked Saga. So the dream, if I was writing this as a fairy tale, is my opponent draws Ursa Saga right now. Just like I drew the Wasteland before. All right. So no such luck. Here's basic Swamp. That's the play pattern you have to think about when you're, you know, sideboarding in Harbinger. Then you have to think about your ability to go get Swamp. So let's attack for 5. Play second main phase Harbinger. Is that even better than? Let's do the math here. Here's 5. Yeah. Maybe Harbinger is slightly better here. Because that bounce on Brazen might come up. Yeah, the opponent's in big trouble here. Opponent's in very big trouble. So now, I think the way to win this game, or not lose it rather, is to pass the turn here and play around slow-rolled defense grid into a top-deck One Ring so that I have 3 mana. Very unlikely to happen, but also pretty free to do. All right, we take down match 1 here, and to be honest, everything just lined up perfectly in both games. So yeah, not much to say there other than generic disruption for the win. All right, let's keep playing. All right, round 2 on the draw here, and life is already seeming more complicated, but that's how it goes sometimes. Ooh, Prismatic Vista. So this will be a tough one. Probably some control deck. Okay, so I draw Bauble. That means I can look at my own deck and then decide whether to fetch or just play the sea. It's decent. I want to draw Fatal Push. I most likely don't against that deck, right? So in theory, my opponent could be a Stoneforge deck. But I think Prismatic Vista has me thinking about Show and Tell variants, has me thinking about control decks with low number of creatures. So I think if I keep that push and I draw a second one later, I'm going to be very, very sad. Third land, not perfect. I'm going to place another Vista. So maybe I have to think about some back to basics Blood Moon type thing. Not bad. So I guess I'll cast Ponder and another Nethergoyf here. Looking for something like Force of Will would be awesome. But maybe even Daze is good. Yeah, let's try and trust that Daze is good. So I go... Nope. Nope. Yes. Brainstorm is the next card. It'll push under that. Maybe that's fine. I want to play this Nethergoyf out first in case it gets countered. It's growing my Nethergoyf. It's always good to think about. Why is it smart to play stuff first main? Why is it smart to play stuff second main? I'm putting on a very decent amount of pressure here. If my opponent had Prismatic Ending, I would have expected this card to get killed. Same with Plow. So by keeping the Daze, I'm targeting 3 jobs basically. Let's see. Brainstorm. Yes. Okay. So a card, obviously, I could have double Dazed, but I don't think that's a winning strategy. If I die to Terminus here, my opponent will need a Force on top of it. So, I mean, I don't think I can just play around. I need to advance my stuff here. Okay. Basic Mountain. So, dream scenario is opponent tries to Blood Moon me, but realistically, that's not going to happen. Oh, Trainer. Interesting. So That's not the end of the world, but it is an onboard wizard for Flame of Anor. Opponent finds a Brainstorm. It looks like Netherglyphs at 3/4 is awesome against my opponent's deck. Okay. So now I could Brainstorm, grow the Netherglyphs, Fatal Push. Wait a minute. If I go Tameo first, this is maybe super sick turn. Play Tameo, play Brainstorm, play Fatal Push, attack for 8. Not bad. Probably should have played a land there. I don't know if Prismatic Vista decks are likely to play Daze, but there's no reason for me to play like this. So that was not good. So let's see. Maybe it's just Brazen and Ponder. I keep a Brazen. That's probably fine. So let's flip this Tameo. Plus it right away. And now kill the trainer and attack for 8. My opponent force of wills, it's whatever. Then I attack and force the chum block. Yeah, Mistress Bauble doing a lot of work here with Netherglyph. That's a card that I haven't seen anybody else play, but I suggested to quite a few players. It just makes Netherglyph into an actual, you know, I don't know, 1-mana Tarmogoyf, for the lack of a better word. So this is probably where it is. There's enough, you know, stuff I don't want my opponent to draw into that I'm also, there's a big risk that this Daze is going to be bad. So I think this is just a good play. I would imagine that deck has a hard time coming back from stuff like this. They mainly play Slow and Steady wins the race cards, and doesn't have a whole lot of comeback mechanism built into it. Kind of like my deck, I guess. My opponent needs a very special card now. I even have Murktide covered. Yeah, this is not gonna cut it, opponent. I'm gonna Daze your Brainstorm, and then I'm gonna return Fatal Push and attack for lethal. All right, wizards. So I like big beefy creatures against a wizard deck. I also like Hydroblast. I don't like Force of Wills. I don't like Dazes, even though they were pretty good there, kind of stampeding on somebody lying on the ground already. Go for the Throat is not great, but fine. Same could be said about Fluster. Some number of days is probably not insane. Oh, for now, 1. So when you're bringing in Fluster in a matchup like this, you just have to, you know, Fluster the first Ponder or Brainstorm you see, right? But they're also going to be having stuff like Pyroblast, the Flame of Anor. So there's plenty of targets. Just don't get, you know, don't get greedy with a soft counter like that. Just cash it in when you can. I think this is going to be how I sideboard. Maybe I can trim a Wasteland for, yeah, I think this is good. Wasteland, you know, against a Prismatic Vista deck is not that great. A trim a copy can still randomly hit a Volcanic Island, but can also pay for, you know, Bowmasters, Liliana, Kaito, stuff like that. Okay. Let's try this. Let's try. So now we know that, you know, pushes are good. In general, a deck like this is just, after sideboard, you know you only have live cards, because that's how you build your sideboard in a way that you don't end up with bad cards in the main deck. That's just the philosophy of a deck like this. So game 1, you're going to have to hope your stuff is good, but we hitch when we can with, you know, the generic stuff we already discussed, Wasteland, Force, Thoughtseize, and then we kind of specialized after sideboard, kind of like a, I don't know, modern Jund deck 10 years ago, or is it Murktide deck a few years ago in Modern? It's probably some solid analogies. Esper, Luris, and Vintage, same thing. Plow and Force Negation aren't good against the same deck, so after sideboard you can optimize your deck. And that's exactly what we've done here. I will say they have more card advantage built in than we have. We have tiny bit more individual card quality, so should be fine. Okay, this hand has a bit of an awkward land start, but I think it's fine. I think against a bolt deck, you need to think about the size of our Nethergoyf before exposing it, in a perfect world at least. Unclear if the Prismatic Vista deck is also a Wasteland deck. Very happy to dodge turn 1 Tamiyo here. Here's Flusterstorm, but I don't think I have much other than this Undercity Sewers to do. Turn 1 Sewer is not ideal, especially when on the draw. How do you feel about Fatal Push? Then I can go double 1-drop next turn. Then, yeah, should be good. So right now, I guess my knowledge of, is this a Wasteland deck, comes into play. I look very silly if I get wasted here and I kept a spell on top. Same philosophy if I see a land and I keep it and I don't get wasted, right? So sometimes you have to make those decisions with imperfect information and hope for the best. No fetch end of turn for my opponent. I guess that's them saying they want to stay on a perfect mana base instead of going Surreal. Here's Trainer. Trainer is actually quite annoying for my plan. Wonder if I make a new one. Trainer into Plow, so they're Jeskai Wizards. Okay. Sure. So I have a lot of options here. Could go Nethergoyf, Hold Up, Push and Fluster. That's probably not super exciting. I could also go Nethergoyf Tamiyo and then hope that my opponent's respect for days is what prevents them from casting the 3-drop Flame of Anor. Maybe that's how I play. I go Swamp Tamiyo first, then Nethergoyf. Yeah, I mean, this is not perfect because this card, if I kill this card, it's card advantage. Chances are these two will die, and then I'm just, you know, I just spend the turn cycle. Maybe that's fine. Ooh, wait a minute. Why is the opponent attacking here? Okay, they're not. Here's Tundra, so they do expose a land. And they go for the flame. That's annoying. I really wanted to dodge that card. Yeah, this is a big problem. Let's see, how do I play? Island, not the worst draw in the world. So my opponent is very, very far ahead on cards now. What happens if I go kill that Wasteland Tundra attack? Yeah, that's probably how I play. Let's see. Kill Trainer. Hopefully keep my opponent off white. And if that's not possible, I hopefully get to fluster something this turn. Is that ever true, though? Maybe I should have just cast Ponder there. Because if my opponent has the white source, I'm not flustering a Plow. Could have gotten in for 1 more damage. So the only way I'm countering a Plow is if my opponent goes cantrip first in order to find it. Yeah, that was not good. I should have attacked for 1 more. Okay, so right now it looks like my opponent is sleeping a tiny bit at the wheel to let me cast this card. It's not bad for me. I guess Let's do like this. So now if my opponent casts Swords to Plowshares, I get to bluster it. It's not bad. Because I got to fire off the Ponder first. So a little bit of free damage here. I will just say I'm horribly behind here, so while this is good for me, it's unlikely to result in anything meaningful. I am getting in here for damage. It looks like my opponent has Pyroblast with the way they're playing. Also playing this a bit, I'm not going to say reckless, but they didn't assume anything bad could happen because they held up the blast here. So a little bit of rogue factor here. Brewer's advantage with Fluster, because if they just sorcery speed that plow, I look super silly. Here's Prismatic Endings. My opponent is made of removal. So I feel like this is a spot where Liliana of the Veil, it's time to shine. Because if I play this, it gets countered. I think this is actually one of the best spots I've seen for Liliana of the Veil in a decade. Because I have this card I don't care about, and I'm behind on cards. So having this in play is just hopefully going to be solid. If I can activate it over... Okay, well, perfect. So my intention was to eat some cards here. And I ate some cards. So let's not play out this land. Then I go Tamiyo pass next turn, and I hope to catch my opponent off guard with a flip. Let's see. Opponent has their own Tamiyo. Now, this looks like a rough matchup overall. Let me put it that way. So let's see. Play Tamiyo. Play land. Pass the turn. Then I hope my opponent will point a removal spell at it. It's not the case. Opponent attacks. And it's pretty annoying that I kind of have to play this a bit passively with the Brainstorm, or at least that's my conclusion. Ooh, Thoughtseize is not bad, but I guess let's attack here. So now I feel like if my opponent has something, they're not going to let me attack. Ooh. This is very good for the opponent. Plan is to find a Bowmaster. If I Brainstorm into a Bowmaster here, I'm the champ. Let's see if I'm the champ. I'm not the champ, but I do find a Hydroblast, which is amazing. Okay. I can put back a land and a Daze here. Or can I? Does my opponent have a second plow here as a response to this flip? If they have a second plow, I kind of get blown out. But I think I have to do that. I think I need to rely on my opponent's last two cards to be, you know, more flames. The Pyroblast that I actually read. Yeah, let's play like that. I dodged the plow. So my guess is now my opponent's hand is Flame of Anor, Pyroblast, and a land. And I get to Thoughtseize both. But let's see if I'm right about that one. Counter target spell if it's red. That is certainly something I want to do. So now let's see. Let's see how powerful of a magician I am. Thoughtseize. Wait a minute. The opponent had the plow but didn't want to go for it. This is amazing for me. So now I get to snag both Pyroblasts. So the read on the Pyroblast was correct. The read on the plow was not, but my opponent respected Daze too much. Now we're going to have a small situation here. Actually, my opponent's going to flip this and can bring back Pyroblast next turn, right? Yeah, I guess I didn't accomplish that much. I gave myself a shot, though. Pretty complicated game. I feel like the opponent resolved +3 card advantage in the beginning, maybe even +3, yeah. And now my opponent's going to do that. My opponent has a plow and 3 unknowns. Yeah, I'm still losing this game, though. Give it a good shot. It's almost impossible to see how I win this game. We know about the plow. Plow is a card I could Thoughtseize out of my opponent's hand. Is that how I play? Probably is. Then the opponent can just bring it back. Yeah, everything is bad here. Opponent has better top decks than me in this matchup. Ooh. Yeah, they successfully outgrinded me here. Pretty sweet deck. So my opponent has showed that they respect days a lot, which is just good in general. I still think 2 is a good number, mainly because now I'm on the play. They want to cast some 3 drops. Yeah, let's try again. Yeah, that version definitely goes bigger than mine. Also with plows and endings in the mix, they're not even that soft to Nethergoyf as I thought. Those kind of decks, legacy players just like a lot. It's like Stoneblade, etc. Yeah, this is probably the marginal keep. So let's start off with C Nethergoyf. And probably make some sorcerer speed surveilling next turn, even though I don't love it. I'm weak against turn 1 Timmy. I would probably have to bounce it. Then, yeah, I'm just hoping to connect with this Kaito and find a good spot. It looks like that's going to be not super realistic. The dream is the opponent goes Ponder here, but no such luck. Here's Wasteland. It doesn't do anything. The opponent's done a good job of making sure that's the case. So I guess I brazen that card. Fatal Push would have been a lot better, killing it for good and pumping the yard. Instead, I'm over here attacking for 1. I'm trying to think if there's a way for my opponent to not block the Nethergoyf. Problem is, let's see. How can I make that a reality? My opponent plays into Daze. Okay. My opponent had no choice but to play into Daze. So let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Okay, that card is certainly not bad. So I think that just fixes my play here because Wasteland even connects. Okay, so the Kurdabe is attacking. Good thing about a Kurdabe is the 1/2 that my opponent can play here is, you know, not big enough to block it. Here's Trainer. And now I get to probably Ninja Kaito. But my opponent's doing a good job here of grinding. That's just what the deck does, right? Flare of Denial, which is annoying if it wasn't for ninjutsu not being, you casting the spell. So the chump block is hard to find here for my opponent. So I get a ninja going. start drawing a little bit of cards. Surveil 2, draw. Hopefully go for the throat is probably better than a brick. Now my opponent, of course, has Pyroblast in their deck. But I have to play like this. Opponent most likely looking for a red source. Looks like their mana base, while being solid on paper, also can get exploited with, you know, the one, like the 1+1 Surveil, the 1 Tundra, the 1 Volcanic, stuff like that. Okay, looks like the opponent bricked here, which is incredible for me. The opponent bricked. Okay. I draw Orcus Bowmaster. Sick. So I'm trying to think here. How do I play Magic? I feel like I play Magic by casting Bowmasters first. If I ping my opponent, then I can plus. Nah, that doesn't really make sense because I also want to draw the card. So maybe just attack first, see what happens. Then draw the card. Yeah, I think I like that. Kaito getting in there, and now it's kind of my turn to grind away in this matchup. So that card connected. Now surveilling. I mean, these cards are good. I'm going to put 2 cards back, though. They might not be doing anything, which is incredible for me. What happens if I push that card? I play 2 threats. This way I'm taking Flare of Denial out of the equation. I'm going to lead with the Nethergoyf to make sure my opponent... because they know about that Nethergoyf, right? So I played first. Then I played the Bowmasters. I want to play a land first in case my opponent casts a Desperation Brainstorm in response. So here I'm fetching. I probably should have waited, though. Yeah, I should have waited for sure. Plow. Play this one while tapped out. Opponent Force of Wills. Totally reasonable. Probably pitching the Flare. Nope, pitching the Pierce. Okay. I know my opponent is not drawing a land. Obviously could have more cantrips. Funnily enough, yeah, that card is decent. It clears the one, you know, the next card on Brainstorm. So, yeah, ooh, pretty nice. So they get into a tap land here. That's not bad. I think my play is to kill the trainer and attack. Pretty nice draw. Let's see. Am I happy if the opponent chum blocks? I don't think there's a good reason to give them that shot. Let's go for the throat. Attack, draw. So now I have to think about if I want to Brazen or Thoughtseize. That's why I draw first, because I could draw, you know, something that fits better with the Thoughtseize. Yeah, I mean, Wasteland looks pretty darn juicy here. Let's do that. I feel like my opponent will have some good cards here. Let's see. So the flame is not great right now, right? 5 damage to a creature. Guess I just take a Snapcaster. I don't care about Flare. Let's take a Snapcaster. Let's Wasteland a Tundra. pass. So worth noting is I could have played a Brazen, but I just figured my opponent would have some white stuff in hand that would make that card non-lethal. Okay, so that is certainly a play. Opponent mills over. Let's see. No, none of that. None of that. So they have Flare, Flame, and Snapcaster. And my opponent is more than welcome to nice draw. My opponent is more than welcome to flash in the Snapcaster here, in my opinion. So let's attack with Kaito and then deploy 2 creatures afterwards. Another Kaito. Is that... Yeah. Let's see. Maybe that's not that great. Put that into the graveyard. Draw Nethergoyf. Wow. So... Nethergoyf, Murktide, I guess. Let's see. How much stuff do we have out here to keep? I don't have to play a 7/7 Merc either. I can just go and exile, push, push. Land. Land. This should be fine. Guess I'm letting my opponent kill this with Flame of Anor now. But I don't think that's a problem with the way their hand is constructed. So let's say the opponent had a little more life to work with, then you want to make sure it doesn't die to Flame of Anor. You can just exile a sorcery there. That would be totally fine. Holding up this Surveil for end of turn, depending on what happens, but in reality, my opponent cannot deal with 3 lethal things. All right. So we managed to outgrind the grind deck. That's pretty cool. I needed some help here. My opponent needed to brick a little bit on Brainstorm. I needed to, you know, draw well, connect with Kaito, and write that to victory. So yeah, not bad, not bad. Let's see if we can take down one more unsuspecting opponent. Okay, round 3. I'm on the draw here, playing Dimir tempo. And yeah, let's see if we can continue the winning here. Pretty solid hand here. Some stuff that the opponent has to deal with. I can fetch basic island, go Tamiyo, build a solid mana base here. The cost of doing so is I can't double black spell turn 2 though. And I should have given that a bit more thought. So if I go Island Tamiyo, my opponent plays some creature that I need to push. I can't play the Nethergoyf. Yeah, I think that's too steep of a price. So I'm going to do it like this. This is something you have to think about a lot with this deck, where it seems like, oh, it's free. We can go for basics. Let's go. But if we're giving up double spell potential while being on the draw, I think that's too much. With that being said, I have no idea what my opponent's playing. Could be anything, so let's see. Okay, so it looks like we're up against beans here. So lots of grindy decks here in the leagues. People love the grindy blue decks. Milling over Fatal Push. What does that tell us? No black mana, I guess. Here's up the Beanstalk. So now I'm flipping my Tamiyo, which is pretty good. I guess my opponent has to force a will a Brainstorm, which is not ideal. So what I could do is cast Ponder first and look for days. So I have 2 options here. If I Ponder first, I look for my own force or days to protect the Brainstorm, which is, you know, good play. The other one is I cast Brainstorm first and leave open the option to find my own Wasteland to kill their Hedge Mace. Also a powerful play. I think I'm going to go for this one and try and protect the Tamiyo. That didn't happen. These cards are solid. How about I... do I want all of them? Maybe. Another Goif is probably pretty juicy at this point, so maybe I go like this. So now I have to hedge a little bit against the brainstorm getting countered. And I'm even playing it into days by doing this. I didn't think about this. It's actually not the best. Maybe I just messed up here. Maybe I messed up. So my opponent obviously doesn't have black mana right now. They could find it and then kill the Tamiyo. But actually have a good idea this card will survive through the next turn. So that's a reason to play another Goif, I feel like. What if I'm losing a land next? That doesn't really matter. Okay, I'll try like this and be a bit creature-centric. Questionable. But my read is, if my opponent doesn't have black mana, they're very likely to have Force of Will. I'll get my Brainstorm Force. It's not obviously not the end of the world, but it is annoying. So I want to play a worse card out to force, basically. And if they didn't have black last turn, they might not get it this turn, and then I get another crack at it with Tamiyo. So pretty complicated start to this game. My opponent keeps the cards. So now a card like Murderous Cut is on the table. This looks like Push or Murderous Cut. Fatal Push to Tamiyo, so I didn't get my second chance. And then the Wasteland here, which I don't care about, but my opponent doesn't know that. So now I feel like I should Brainstorm. How do I feel about getting that card dazed? Probably fine. I'm putting an instant and an artifact into the yard this turn. Not bad, not bad. And now I can get rid of Swamp and Bauble. Maybe Push is really bad. Maybe I get rid of Push and Bauble. My opponent could have Bowmaster. Okay. So let's do it like this. Fetch. Any other Goif. Bauble. See what we're working with. Brainstorm. Back for 5. So we're putting on a lot of pressure here. Daze. Dodge the Bowmaster. Not bad, not bad. So now I have two very big creatures here. But my opponent can make a 6/6 Murktide if they have a land. If they don't have a land, they also need a Force of Will. The 6/6 Murktide is better than Nethergoyf at the moment, so let's see what happens here. Brainstorm. You knew about that from the Bauble Peak. I'm getting some really cool matches today. I'm really happy that I was suggested to play this deck on the channel. So I think this is where I daze. I feel like my opponent put two bad cards back on top of the deck, and this is my time to try and cut them off here. Yeah, I was about to say, I expect to get forced. The good thing is then they draw into a bad card that they put there, right? So definitely not the worst thing that could have happened. Now, I feel like I'm going to be attacking my opponent down to 2, and it's up to them. Yes, shuffle. Play Swamp. Okay. So they're alive here with a Murderous Cut or Push. You don't jam them, though. Okay. Well, since my opponent let me take my draw step, I don't think they have a removal. Because if I just draw Daze or Force here, they're cooked. So that tells us a little bit about their hand. Opponent's down to 2. I feel like this is where I play a Murktide. I need another lethal creature on the battlefield. Can I do anything smart? I can leave 3 cards in the yard. This way, so let's see. I should leave the instant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I leave creature, artifact, instant because I have a ponder in hand to play. So obviously it's not perfect to shrink the Nethergoyfs, but now I have 3 lethal creatures against a deck with probably only a few Uros as life gain. So I think this is just me overwhelming my opponent. So let's see. Does the world of push double murderous cut exist? It does exist, but it's very unlikely. All right, that was pretty lucky. So, yeah, dazes are not amazing. I feel like Liliana of the Veil is not amazing against what I would guess is a Bowmaster deck. But let's see. Go for the Throat kills the big stuff. I like that. Barrowgoyf is another big boy. Like that. Harbinger can potentially punish them, their mana base, severely. Like that. Especially when they're on the play, they're less likely to go for basics. So why am I keeping fatal pushes? Keeping fatal pushes because of Bowmasters. Also kills Uro in a pinch. I'm keeping forces to stop Beanstalk on the stack. Bringing in Fluster to take the bargain on the stack. And I think this is going to be my setup. So the 2 pushes are their weak cards. Everything else I kind of like. Is Hearse good against them? Yeah, maybe Hearse is good. Malice Spellbomb probably slightly better. And then a single push. That sounds fine. Okay, let's try this out. I think this is going to be cool. Also worth noting, my opponent can have carpets, which makes, you know, the Wasteland Harbinger plan bad, but you can't win them all. This hand is fine. It has some potential with the double Valley of Gorgoroth. I have no idea why they want to change, you know, names of the cards. So I'm happy to see this. Dual land Ponder. Also, my opponent doesn't know that they're getting wasted, so maybe they get a little greedy on the Ponder instead of hedging with lands. All right. I'll just start wastelanding here because it's just, I know I don't have any threat on the board, but it's some, let's call it free win potential. Mystic Sanctuary Pass is certainly not an amazing play. I feel like this is when I wasteland once more and then I start playing the game. Basically trying to, yeah, just free roll a little bit. And what do you know? Opponent with no land drop. So now I want to play Ponder and look for my next land drops. I do find my next land drop, so let's keep those. I want to prioritize putting a threat into play. So probably going to Bowmaster next turn. Opponent goes to clean up here, which is obviously atrocious. Discarding Witherbloom command. I'm going to be upkeeping this Bowmaster before my opponent gets to draw. The reason to do that is if my opponent draws a non-land, then the end-step Bowmasters is going to be worse against Force of Will. So now I played before they know about their draw. So getting forced here. I will force back pitching my Brazen. Because a reason to do that is a way for my opponent to get into this game has to do with, you know, cantrips. So drawing the first land and then casting cantrips is a way to get back. So let's see. Yes, I just attack here. So now, if I ponder into a land, I can play a Murktide to keep up the pressure. I did find a little bit of everything here. Is that force going to be amazing? If that's the case, what am I doing this turn? Then I'm... Wait a minute. So if I go land, Spellbomb, crack. That's probably a good play, though. Go crack Spellbomb here. If I crack Spellbomb, I'm taking a lot of cards off the table on the side of my opponent. Murktide being the biggest one. Maybe that's how I should play. I guess on my opponent's draw step. Ooh. Maybe I should have responded there. Yeah, I feel like I made a mistake. Okay. I should have responded to the fetch there. Okay, that happens. So I didn't get punished. That was good. Opponent goes for basic. I'll also go for basic and crack the spell bomb. The reason to do that is kind of prepare for future Harbinger. So now I expect to get Bowmastered, and funnily enough, my opponent is right back into this game. I have some solid cards in hand, though. So let's see. Fluster. Probably not very good. Well, maybe it is, because I play Baragoyf with backup here. Let's play Baragoyf holding up Fluster. And step Bowmaster? And why would they not do it on combat? I'm trying to think here. Okay, maybe they don't have Bowmaster. I definitely think this is worth fighting over. It's kind of hard to kill. You need Revolt for push. You need Graveyard for cut. I think I'm just going to try my best to pressure my opponent on you know, the life total. Ooh, there's the concession. All right, so a cool, perfect run here with Dimir tempo. Let's quickly look at the list before we wrap up this video. So, I mean, I played a very standard build, to be honest. Liliana showed up once where it was good. It was good enough to either grind a little bit of cards, trying to get back to parity. It ended up getting forced, so, you know, can't really complain about that. I would argue that since I cut an Orcus Bowmasters, you would have to do some pretty serious explaining when it comes to the fourth Orcus Bowmasters versus Liliana. You can argue I should have played it instead of a Brazen Borrower, because that's like another, you know, kill a big thing that also does something else. But I think ultimately 3 mana for an Edict or some non-consequential discards thing is going to be the average use of that card, so I wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest. Null Rods worked out nicely in the first matchup. Obviously, I didn't draw them, but they would have been insane in the matchup. The Graveyard Hate is not really my cup of tea here. I enjoy the crossover of Grafdigger's Cage playing against Oops All Spells and Greens on Zenith. But other than that, super solid deck. If you like to cast Ponder and actually have some serious clock, I think the Nethergoyf plus Bauble just came up time and time again, and I really like my initial idea of putting Baubles into the deck, and all the feedback I've gotten from players is that it's awesome for them as well. So yeah, I guess Blue-Black Midrange taking the metagame here by storm and leaving the opposition with no chance. So yeah, as always, thanks so much for watching, and thanks for submitting the deck nonetheless. I highly appreciate that. It was super fun. Keep grinding, and see you back next time.